The Reconciliation Legacy: How Mandela's Vision Transformed the World. I want you to imagine sitting in a crowded courtroom in Cape Town in April 1996, where a mother named Amy Beale's parents have just done something that has left everyone speechless. They've looked into the eyes of the men who killed their daughter and said, "We forgive you." Their 26-year-old daughter, Amy, a white American Fulbright scholar, was murdered by an angry mob in a South African township in 1993. But instead of demanding vengeance, her parents have chosen forgiveness and started a foundation to help the very community where she died. This moment represents the birth of a global revolution in how we think about justice and healing. What Amy Beale's parents demonstrated was not just personal courage. It was the practical application of Nelson Mandela's philosophy that would transform not just South Africa, but the entire world's approach to conflict resolution. Today, I want to show you how Mandela's vision of reconciliation became humanity's most powerful tool for healing divided societies, creating a blueprint adapted from Belfast to Rwanda, from Colombia to corporate boardrooms worldwide. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was conceived by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, built on Mandela's revolutionary belief that truth and forgiveness could be more powerful than punishment in healing a nation's wounds. When South Africa's new democracy was being formed, they faced a terrible choice: pursue Nuremberg-style trials that would imprison hundreds of apartheid officials, or try something unprecedented. Restorative justice focused on healing rather than punishment. The concept was radical in its simplicity. Instead of trials focused on punishment, South Africa created a forum where perpetrators could confess their crimes publicly in exchange for amnesty, while victims could tell their stories and receive official acknowledgement of their suffering. The goal wasn't to let criminals escape consequences. It was to create shared understanding of what happened so the country could move forward with common truth rather than competing narratives. Over 17 months, the Truth Commission held public hearings broadcast across the country. South Africans heard stories hidden for decades, victims describing unimaginable brutality and perpetrators detailing their crimes with clinical precision. They witnessed moments of genuine reconciliation and raw, unhealed pain that reminded everyone that forgiveness is a process, not an event. Most importantly, they created a model that the world began studying intensely. The first major test came in Northern Ireland, where 30 years of sectarian violence had claimed over 3,500 lives. Catholics and Protestants were locked in cycles of violence that racy. This moment represents the birth of a global revolution in how we think about justice and healing. Stead every military solution and political pressure. In the mid-1990s, Northern Ireland's leaders began studying Mandela's approach. They invited South African negotiators to Belfast, examined power-sharing arrangements, and explored whether former enemies could become partners. The breakthrough came with the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, which embodied the same principles Mandela had pioneered, all parties feeling they had won something, not just that they hadn't lost everything. Unionists maintained Northern Ireland's connection to Britain, while Republicans gained recognition of their Irish identity and a democratic path toward potential unification. Both communities would share power, creating incentives for cooperation rather than competition. The sport dimension was crucial too. The agreement included cross-community sports programs and shared facilities that helped break down barriers between Protestant and Catholic neighborhoods. But perhaps the most dramatic test came in Rwanda, where the 1994 genocide had created seemingly impossible wounds to heal. In 100 days, approximately 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were murdered by their neighbors, friends, and family members. How do you rebuild a society where killers and survivors must live side by side? Rwanda's new government recognized that mass prosecutions wouldn't heal the deep wounds. Instead, they adapted South Africa's model through traditional Gakaka courts. community meetings where perpetrators and survivors came together, crimes were acknowledged, stories told, and communities began rebuilding relationships. Rwanda built on Mandela's insight about shared symbols and experiences. They banned ethnic identification, promoted Rwandan identity over Hutu or Tutsi identity, created national service programs where young people from different backgrounds worked together, and designated monthly community service days where all citizens literally rebuild their country together. The results have been extraordinary. Today, Rwanda has one of Africa's fastest-growing economies, the world's highest percentage of women in parliament, and is considered one of the continent's most stable nations. This doesn't erase genocide trauma, but demonstrates that even societies torn by unimaginable violence can choose reconciliation over revenge. The influence spread far beyond post-conflict societies. Colombia established a Truth Commission after 50 years of civil war. East Timor chose truth and reconciliation over war crimes trials after their independence struggle. Peru created a Truth Commission following Shining Path violence. Sierra Leone balanced truth commissions with special courts after devastating civil war. The business world embraced reconciliation principles, especially in crisis management. Companies learned that denial and damage control often worsen crises. Stakeholders expect acknowledgement of harm, genuine apology, and credible commitments to change. Successful corporate responses now follow Mandela's playbook. Tell the truth, take responsibility, express remorse, make amends, demonstrate concrete changes. Only when they began acknowledging engineering failures and demonstrating safety commitments did they start rebuilding trust. Technology companies have been measured against Truth Commission standards. Facebook's Cambridge Analytica response, Google's privacy handling, and Twitter's approach to misinformation are evaluated on whether they tell the whole truth, acknowledge harm, and take meaningful prevention steps. The reconciliation model influenced international relations too. Germany's post-war reconciliation with European neighbors became a model for former enemies becoming allies through acknowledgement, remorse, and sustained relationship building. Japan's complex relationship with wartime history shows both the power and limitations. Where acknowledgement exists, relationships improved, but where denial persists, tensions continue. America's reckoning with slavery and segregation has been deeply influenced by South African insights. From local truth commissions to national conversations about reparations, Americans grapple with questions Mandela and Tutu framed. How do you acknowledge historical injustices without endless cycles of blame? How do you balance accountability with moving forward together? Sport as a reconciliation tool became globally institutionalized. The Olympics now explicitly promotes peace through sport, with programs bringing together athletes from conflicting nations. FIFA uses football to bridge divides in post-conflict societies. The NBA's programs bring together young people from different backgrounds, building on Mandela's insight that shared experiences break down prejudices more effectively than political speeches. But we must acknowledge limitations and failures. The South African model has been criticized for prioritizing political stability over economic justice. While the Truth Commission prevented cycles of revenge, it did less to address massive economic inequalities apartheid created. Many feel reconciliation emphasis came at redistribution's expense. Clear failures exist where reconciliation was attempted but failed. In Sri Lanka, truth commissions and reconciliation processes were undermined by continued ethnic tensions and political interference. The Middle East represents the most challenging test case. Despite numerous peace processes and grassroots efforts, violence cycles continue with competing victim narratives, making mutual acknowledgement extremely difficult. These failures teach us reconciliation isn't magic, but requires specific conditions. Leadership genuinely committed to healing rather than victory, communities exhausted by conflict and ready for alternatives, acknowledgement of mutual suffering and practical benefits, giving all parties incentives to maintain peace. In our digital age, reconciliation principles are adapting to new contexts. Social media platforms experiment with restorative approaches to online harassment, bringing conflicted users into facilitated dialogue rather than simply banning accounts. Digital mediation services use reconciliation principles for neighbor, family, and business disputes. The COVID-19 pandemic created new applications as communities struggled with divisions over public health measures. Town halls and dialogue sessions used truth and reconciliation principles to help neighbors rebuild relationships after bitter conflicts over masks, vaccines, and lockdowns. Climate change represents the ultimate global reconciliation test, requiring unprecedented cooperation between nations with different historical responsibilities and capacities. Mandela's principles, acknowledging past harm, taking responsibility, committing to concrete changes benefiting everyone, are increasingly recognized as essential for building global consensus on humanity's greatest collective challenge. What makes Mandela's reconciliation legacy enduring is its fundamental reorientation of how we think about conflict. Traditional approaches focus on winning and losing, defeating opponents, and achieving victory. Mandela showed a different possibility. Conflict could be transformed rather than won, enemies could become partners, and politics could create shared prosperity rather than redistribute from losers to winners. This perspective influences everyone from corporate executives managing workplace disputes to teachers helping children resolve conflicts to parents mediating sibling rivalries. The core insight remains constant. Lasting solutions require all parties feeling heard, acknowledged, and respected, with positive incentives to maintain peace rather than return to conflict. Mandela's model also represents a profound shift in leadership understanding. Before Mandela, leadership meant power, defeating opponents, imposing will, achieving victory for your constituency. Mandela demonstrated leadership based on moral authority, courage to do what's right rather than popular, wisdom to understand opponents' fears as legitimate as your aspirations, and vision to see cooperation possibilities others dismiss as impossible. This leadership model influences business schools, military academies, nonprofits, and community groups worldwide. The most effective leaders are now understood as those who bring together diverse stakeholders, acknowledge different perspectives, and create solutions enabling everyone to succeed. As we face an uncertain future with challenges requiring unprecedented cooperation, pandemics, climate change, technological disruption, rising inequality, Mandela's reconciliation model offers both inspiration and practical guidance. It reminds us that even the deepest divisions can be healed, the most bitter enemies can become friends, and the most polarized societies can choose unity over division. But these transformations do not happen automatically. They require leaders willing to take enormous risks for the greater good, communities ready to choose healing over hatred, and institutions channeling conflict toward constructive rather than destructive ends. The seeds planted in a South African prison cell, nurtured through patient dialogue, and harvested in a rugby stadium have grown into a global forest of reconciliation initiatives. From Belfast to Bogota, from Kigali to corporate boardrooms, from neighborhood mediation to international peace negotiations, people apply Mandela's lessons. Understanding opponents is more powerful than defeating them, truth is more healing than revenge, and the courage to forgive can transform entire societies. This is Nelson Mandela's ultimate legacy, not just what he accomplished in South Africa, but what he made possible worldwide. He showed us reconciliation isn't just a nice ideal, but a practical strategy for solving humanity's most complex conflicts. He proved forgiveness isn't weakness but strength. Acknowledgement isn't surrender but wisdom. And choosing to build bridges instead of walls can literally change the world. The reconciliation revolution that began in South Africa continues today. One relationship at a time, one community at a time, one choice at a time. Each of us has the opportunity to be part of that revolution by choosing understanding over anger, dialogue over demagoguery, and hope over hatred. That's Mandela's gift to humanity, the knowledge that a better world is possible and the roadmap for how to build it.